Under Donald Trump, his administration was nothing but pure chaos. We had the insurrection of January 6th, and we had nothing but haphazardness. We were literally declining on the world stage as a superpower, and nobody wants to go back to that. America doesn't want to go back to that. Donald Trump is not going to make America great again. It is unfortunately going to make America worse off, and that would be the end of democracy, as some people are posturing, should we see Donald Trump come in for another term as the 47th president of the United States.
Race for the White House has kicked off in the US, where overnight Donald Trump has been projected the winner of the Iowa Republican caucus. Here's the former president speaking a short while ago.
Crooked Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of our country. He's the most incompetent and he's the most corrupt president in the history of our country, and it's not even close.
As is tradition, Iowa is the first state where Republican voters pick their preferred candidate for the party's presidential nomination. From the results so far, Trump is well ahead of the other candidates. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is projected to beat the former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley into second place. Alistair Dorber is Washington correspondent for The Times. He says Trump's legal problems are showing little sign of hurting him among Republican voters.
Every time he's charged with something new or faces a new legal procedure, his poll ratings go up. It's seen, I think, by his core supporters as an example of the deep state trying to kibosh his attempt to get back to the White House. And that's a real rallying call for Trump and his campaign.
Well, the next state to vote is New Hampshire, where primary voters go to the polls a week today. But can anyone stop Donald Trump now from being the GOP candidate for a third consecutive election? Anna Mancuso is a Republican strategist. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. What is your analysis of the results we've seen from Iowa?
Look, my colleagues and I are saying that this is the Ricky Bobby caucus from Talladega Nights, because the fact of the matter was, if you were not first, you were last. And that's exactly what happened. Trump took a commanding lead, taking over 50% of the votes home from Iowa, and Nikki Haley and DeSantis fought it out for second place. And at the end of the day, second place is first loser.
I mean, we kind of knew that Donald Trump would win in Iowa, but the scale of his victory, is that a surprise?
It's not a surprise. Look, Iowa consolidating behind Donald Trump is overwhelming a sign of his weakness, not his strength. White rural evangelical bases, they love him. And of course, they were going to show up to caucus for him and to give him the vote and deliver the Hawkeye state to him. Nobody is surprised by this in the least.
I want to come on to what this means for the other candidates, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, in a moment. But what is it, Anna, about Donald Trump that makes him have the unwavering support, it would seem, of so many Americans? I mean, this is a man who has been criminally indicted 4 times. He faces a series of court cases throughout election year. He left office in disgrace in 2021 after the events of January the 6th, and he's spoken openly in recent months about acting like a dictator on his first day back in the White House. Why do so many Republicans still love him?
At the end of the day, the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party. It is the party of Donald Trump, and his supporters will go to the ends of the earth. And look, he had to leave the Hawkeye state tonight. He left Iowa and went to New York, where he has to appear in court tomorrow, and then he will leave tomorrow evening to head to New Hampshire. That is unprecedented. Historically, what happens is our candidates leave Iowa and they head to New Hampshire. They get in some final last days of campaigning, and then we have the New Hampshire first in the nation, as they like to say, in the Granite State.
What do you make of the performance of Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, his 2 main challengers? I mean, Ron DeSantis has thrown a lot at Iowa. He's campaigned there relentlessly. He won the backing of the state's Governor Kim Reynolds, and yet he only narrowly beat Nikki Haley into second place. Where does his campaign go from here, and where does Nikki Haley's?
Well, what I'm going to tell you is from what I've been hearing from the DeSantis campaign in terms of Iowa, there was a lot of nervousness surrounding how he was going to play in Iowa. He spent an exorbitant amount of money. I mean, he went for broke in Iowa. If you were a betting man, DeSantis was putting it all in Iowa and praying that he could either unseat Trump from the likely nomination and the win in Iowa, or at least come in second place. And that's what he did. But he is going to go on to New Hampshire. I would say earlier this evening during Iowa, we were talking, a couple of friends and I, and we were saying 35% DeSantis folds. And that nervousness carried the campaign through. And DeSantis says, no, we're going to Iowa. We're going to New Hampshire. We had our cards punched and we're off to New Hampshire. You get 3 tickets out of Iowa. The 3 candidates usually leave and head to New Hampshire. And the truth of the matter is that Donald Trump has a first-class ticket to New Hampshire and Ron DeSantis is flying coach.
What about Nikki Haley, though? Because she's not that far off Donald Trump in polls in New Hampshire. And yet, if Ron DeSantis is going to stay in the race, aren't the Republicans just at risk of repeating the same mistakes from 2016, where there were too many candidates other than Trump, so they split the anti-Trump votes?
The fact of the matter is everybody running on the Republican ticket, with the exception of Donald Trump, was not a serious candidate. There was not viability for DeSantis. There's not viability for Nikki Haley. And at the end of the day, everything that is looking, as far as we are reading tea leaves and heading into the general election, once we get through the primary season, it looks to be Donald Trump's nomination to lose. And there isn't much room for Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis to be able to take that away from him.
Is there anything, Mariana, that you think could derail him? I mean, maybe it is his legal challenges.
I would love to say it's his legal challenges, but the fact of the matter is, entrance polling into Iowa this evening, we saw an overwhelming majority of Iowans heading in saying that it didn't matter, that they did not think that his the legal troubles would hinder him from serving as the President of the United States of America.
How will the Democrats react to this? We have the first Democratic primary next week in New Hampshire. Both the Republicans and the Democrats will be voting for their presidential nominee. Obviously, Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee, but he does face a challenge from some candidates, including the Congressman Dean Phillips. Will this make the Democrats think again about whether Joe Biden is the right man to take on Donald Trump?
Absolutely not. Iowa, the biggest winner out of Iowa this evening was Joe Biden, because he is going to get the candidate that he wants, which is Donald Trump.
Can he beat him, though?
Absolutely. He beat him in 2020.
But I mean, there are so many people who say, yeah, we voted for Biden in 2020 because we wanted to get rid of Trump. But they have concerns now. A lot of independent voters who might have backed Joe Biden in 2020 simply concerned that he's too old, even if they actually approve of some of his record. There's quite a positive economic picture in America at the moment. Legislatively, he's done quite well. But they look at Biden and they go, sorry, mate, you're too old.
What they're going to have to remember is, as we get further into the general election, right, we're still in primary season for the Republican Party, but as we get further into this election, the American people will remember that under Donald Trump, his administration was nothing but pure chaos. We had the insurrection of January 6th, and we had nothing but haphazardness. We were literally declining on the world stage as a superpower, and nobody wants to go back to that. America doesn't want to go back to that. Donald Trump is not going to make America great again. It is unfortunately going to make America worse off, and that would be the end of democracy, as some people are posturing, should we see Donald Trump come in for another term as the 47th President of the United States.
Mariana, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's Republican strategist Mary Anna Mancuso.